Welcome back to Movie Recap. Today I'm gonna show you a 2020 Canadian-American horror thriller film called Hunter x Hunter. Spoilers ahead. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The movie begins with a man and his daughter, named Joseph, and Renee, setting up animal traps in the middle of the forest alongside with their dog. Renee successfully captures a beaver in a river and shows it to her father, wherein Joseph then writes on his little notebook. They continue to walk around the forest until they suddenly stumble upon one of their animal traps with only the feet of the animal is left in the trap, and nothing else, in which Renee concludes that something is back and had become a predator to their supposed to be captured animals. Anne, Joseph's wife and Renee's mother, goes to the town to sell animal fur that they had hunted in a grocery store, in exchange for what she needs to buy. Anne is then shocked to know that the prices of animal fur had suddenly gone down, with only a few list of animals had remained its price. Anne suddenly sees an advertisement about houses being up for sale, and takes one leaflet from the wall, and then she suddenly sees a school bus, and a mother taking her children to the bus, with looks of envy being seen on Anne's face. She then goes back home, and only brings the essential things that their hunted fur could afford. While Anne is knitting on a denim pants, the sound of their dog barking puts a smile on her face since it means that Anne's husband and daughter are back from their hunt. As Anne is preparing their meal, Joseph continues to teach Renee about being a hunter, and how to remove the skin of an animal from its flesh, in which Renee can easily pick up what her father teaches her, and can easily answer her father's questions about animals. During their dinner, Anne asks about how Renee's day was, wherein Renee suddenly blurts out that a wolf had eaten one of their trapped raccoon, in which Anne suddenly tells Renee to go and eat in her room since she has to discuss something with her father, Joseph. As Renee leaves, and then asks Joseph why he did not tell Anne about the wolf earlier, and tells Joseph that she will report the incident since she worries about their safety. Joseph then answers Anne that he can fix their wolf problem rather than them running away from their own problem. And then ends up telling Joseph about wanting to buy a house outside of the forest, and letting Renee attend school, in which Joseph changes the topic about their discussion to avoid answering it. As Anne is preparing Renee to go to sleep, she sees Joseph outside, wherein she then comes to Joseph, and tells him to reconsider his decisions about continuing to live in the middle of the forest. And starts to explain how Renee seems to have no freedom to choose how she wants to live her life, and how Renee should be busy thinking about math, and boys rather than wolves in a forest. But a stubborn Joseph continues to hold on to his belief that no one can change his decision about them living in the forest, and staying at their home, not even Anne can change his mind. In which Anne is left speechless by what Joseph said to her, and goes back inside their house feeling heartbroken. But as a partner, Joseph eventually goes near to Anne, who is sitting on the edge of their bed, and comforts her after what happened during their argument. In an early morning, Joseph starts to prepare his equipment for his hunting trip to catch the wolf, and he was startled to see Renee all geared up outside, and wants to come and join her father to hunt. Joseph refuses to let Renee join her in his hunt because of the danger that may come along the way, but Renee insisted, and tells her father that she is smart enough to hunt with Joseph, wherein Joseph eventually agrees. And wakes up to see only their dog, Tova, is the only one home, and asks Joseph if Renee is with him. Joseph reassures Anne that when their trail eventually turns into a hunt, he will send Renee back home. During their hunt and preparing of traps, Joseph suddenly sees a fresh track that he assumes is from the wolf, in which he immediately asks Renee to go back home, and Joseph reminds Renee that when she sees something she should not run. As Anne is getting water in a nearby river, and going back home, she suddenly feels something strange following her, and fear instantly lurks throughout her body that makes her run on the way. At the same time, Renee, who is going back home, also feels a strange feeling that something is following her that makes her run and hide behind a rock. On the other hand, John then tries to know where the wolf is by making a howling noise, in which a wolf indeed answers his howl, and Joseph then goes where the wolf is. Joseph successfully finds the wolf, and tries to shoot at it, in which the wolf escapes by hearing the gunshot. Joseph comes close to the scene where the wolf is located when he fired his gun, and surprisingly sees a human hand which was actually in the wolf's mouth earlier. Joseph then tries to look for the wolf, and ended up seeing marks on the barks of trees along the way, wherein he follows these marks, and was bewildered to see a group of dead bodies of women in the forest. As they were having a dinner, Joseph is still left speechless by what he saw, in which Anne tells Joseph that Renee heard a gunshot during their hunt, and asks Joseph what it was. Joseph refuses to tell Anne about what he saw in the forest, and only tells them that it was nothing. Joseph suddenly goes out, and tests his biggest animal trap, and as he lies down in bed, Anne tells Joseph that once they see the wolf it will all be over. The following day, Joseph comes back to the place where he found the dead bodies and tries to set a trap there. Meanwhile, Anne and Renee are in a nearby river wherein Anne is washing their clothes, when suddenly Renee asks Anne where Tova is. When Renee tries to look for Tova, a wolf suddenly emerges in front of her, which leaves Renee running behind Anne's back. As the wolf draws closer to the frightened mother and daughter, and then loudly shouts back at the wolf until the wolf runs away from them. Anne and Renee hurriedly runs back home, but Renee insisted to get Tova since Tova is alone outside with the wolf, in which Anne then goes back outside to find Tova's dead body, but Anne did not tell Renee about Tova's death. The next morning, Anne still can't get in touch with Joseph through the walkie-talkie, which makes Anne more worried about Joseph's safety. And then tells Renee that they need to find more food, in which Anne and Renee goes out to find food along their trap line, but they both ended up seeing another of their trapped animals' feet with the rest of its body already been devoured by the wolf. While looking around, Anne suddenly sees a ring in a wolf's feces, wherein fear is suddenly seen in her eyes as she realized that the wolf had eaten a human due to the ring that is found in its feces. And then brings Renee along with her to go to the town, and reports to the municipal office about what she saw. The personnel in the municipal office have nothing to help them in Anne's report about her missing husband as well as a wolf near their home since they live in a forest where wolves usually live, and even suggests Anne that when her husband comes back home they should move out of the forest. As Anne and Renee goes back home, and then tells Renee to go and start her lessons, and that she will just look around for a while, wherein Anne then brings a shovel with her, and starts to bury Tova's body. While burying Tova, Anne then hears a noise nearby, and due to her fear of the wolf, she suddenly picks up her gun, and shoots at it. Anne then goes home bringing a young deer, that she accidentally shot, to their table, wherein Renee tells her mother that they shouldn't shoot young deer, but Anne insisted that they will eat it rather than letting good meat go to waste. Anne then asks Renee to teach her how to skin an animal since Renee always watches her father do it. After dinner, Anne still waits for Joseph's response in the walkie-talkie, but a static only reaches the walkie-talkie, in which Anne sleeps at night while holding on to the walkie-talkie, and waits for Joseph. In the middle of the night, Renee suddenly wakes Anne up since she tells her mother that she heard Tova outside, in which Anne then picks up her gun and looks outside. Instead of hearing Tova, Anne suddenly hears a man groaning outside, and suspects that it was Joseph, so Anne rushes towards the groaning man, and sees that it was not Joseph. Anne goes back to their house, and instructs Renee that she should stay in her room, and then Anne eventually helps the man who seems to be in pain, and brings him inside of their home. And lets the man stay in their house since he has an injured leg, in which Renee seems doubtful about letting a stranger into their home since that is what his father told her, but Anne insisted that when someone needs help, they have to help them. The next morning, Renee wakes up, and goes near the stranger, and picks up the stranger's Walkman, and listens to its music. Renee is then startled as the stranger wakes up, and Renee calls Anne, in which Anne then helps the stranger clean and dress its leg wound, and lets him eat and drink. And asks about the stranger, and the stranger tells them that his name is Lou, and that he is a photographer that was lost in the forest when his car broke down, and was attacked by what they assume is the wolf. Anne then suggests Lou that they will drive him to the hospital since his wound can be prone to infections, but as Anne and Renee is bringing Lou to their truck, Lou tells them to stop because of the pain that he is feeling as well as Renee tells Anne that the wolf might hear them because of how loud Lou was. In the end, Lou is brought back to their home and stays in Anne's bedroom. Anne starts to fear how dangerous the wolf is, that is why Anne tells Renee that they should gather all their traps around the house, and set up a smoke and fire outside since that is what the wolf is scared of, according to Joseph. On the other hand, one of the officers in the municipal office, Danny, is bothered by the ring that Anne had found in the feces of a wolf. Danny then goes out, and stops by a car that he had seen for 2 days now, and goes through the forest, in which he also sees marks in the barks of the trees, and follows it. Danny then sees the gore crime scene filled with dead bodies of women, as to what Joseph also saw, and Danny immediately calls for Lucy, but he unfortunately steps on the animal trap that Joseph had set up, as well as his left hand being trapped too, and his scream of excruciating pain can only be heard in the forest. In the municipal office, Lucy then realizes that Danny had not come back yet from his trip because Danny's wife is also asking Lucy where her husband is. Then, Lucy ought to find where Danny is, and goes to where Danny said he will go. Meanwhile, Anne seems to have stayed up all night to guard their home from the wolf, and she eventually goes outside to check the traps that Anne and Renee had set up. Anne sees a rabbit, and kills it with her own hands, which leaves her heartbroken, and talking to the walkie-talkie in hope of hearing from Joseph since she admits that she cannot do this alone. After she talks to the walkie-talkie, she suddenly hears the sound of Joseph's walkie-talkie nearby, and she hurriedly finds where the sound is coming from while shouting Joseph's name. She cries out as she sees Joseph's dead body lying coldly on the floor with a wound on his head, and as she continuously mourns on Joseph's death, she suddenly remembers Lou whom she had brought home, and realizes that Lou has something to do with what happened to Joseph, so she quickly runs back to their home. Lucy then stops by where Danny's car is parked. As she is shouting Danny's name and honking the car, Danny, who seems to have lost a lot of blood from his injuries, pulls out his gun and shoots to the sky in an attempt for Lucy to know his location. Lucy then follows the sound of the gunshots and is horrified to see a seriously injured Danny with dead bodies surrounding him. Danny then tells Lucy to tell Barb, Danny's wife, that he loves her as if he is saying goodbye, but Lucy insisted Danny to stay awake as she is going to call for help. As Anne comes back to their house, she holds tight on her gun while shaking due to the fear of knowing someone dangerous is inside her home with Renee. Anne then goes to Renee's window from outside and tries to wake Renee up, but Renee remains asleep. Anne then looks through her room's window to look at Lou, but Lou is actually awake and sees and knows Anne is already suspicious of him. Anne slowly walks inside to go to Renee's room and carefully tries to wake Renee up, but she was startled as Lou is already by her side and pushes her to the ground and suffocates Anne until she passes out, while Renee wakes up and sees what happened. Anne then wakes up trying to catch her breath and sees Lou taking out the bedding, in which Lou is actually burning it so no traces of his DNA can be identified. While listening to his Walkman, Lou then starts tearing Anne's clothes and attempts to rape her, but Anne luckily reaches for a small animal trap and wounds Lou's face and knocks Lou's face with another tool. Anne hurriedly goes to Renee's room, and what she saw leaves her knees weak and she cries painfully, assuming that Lou had already killed Renee in a brutal way. The police then arrive to Lucy's call for help, and as they were investigating the crime scene, one of the police officers sees a blood trail and follows it, which leads to Anne's house. Anne, with a cold expression on her face, drags Lou to the cabin where they skin their hunted animals and ties as well as hangs Lou up. While listening to Lou's Walkman, Anne sets up Joseph's tools and starts to skin Lou alive. As the policemen come to Anne's home, Anne then goes outside meeting with the policeman and throws Lou's face on the ground. A police enters the cabin and sees Lou, who is completely skinned by Anne, wherein Anne continues to walk slowly and sits in front of their house with no care of what crime she had done and stares blankly because of the pain she had experienced of losing her husband and daughter. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.